Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast with Jeff Mosher and this man, Adam Caplan, as the Eagles did their move this week to improve the secondary. What does it mean? How will the secondary now look? How many teams were involved and why Philadelphia? We'll get into that and more with Adam Caplan from Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, right now here on our Happy Hour Friday edition of Football at 4. Adam Caplan, welcome back, pal. How are you, man?
Good, man. No, I'm enjoying this week. It's been interesting, certainly. The Eagles made the move we talked about on Inside the Birds last week. We said the Eagles were very interested. What we didn't know is... we discussed this on our show yesterday. We knew that the asking price was $10 million a year, and he didn't get that. He got 1 year for $7.5 million, which is fully guaranteed at signing. Then there's upside with the incentives for playing time and production to get to $10 million. He could do it, but he's going to have a really good year to get it. But because my understanding was the Eagles were not going to pay him $10 million a year, and no other team was from what I understand. So. He got a decent deal, considering he got cut. He was not going to be with the Giants, Mike. One way or the other, the Giants were going to move him, either release or cut. They had a trade worked out, they thought, with Houston. He could not agree to an extension there. And there were a lot of teams on him because he's by far, the other part of this, Mike, is the reason why the Eagles were in this is because if you just graded the 10 to 12 available street free agent corners who have got experience or decent players, he's by far James Bradberry the best. And there was a major drop-off, so much so, and I don't think the Eagles would have done anything anywhere close to this time frame in May. I think they probably would have waited a bit because it's Bradberry than everybody else.
Yeah, so you're right about that. And Bradberry obviously was the best option out there. You know, Tees, as you mentioned, we're told he wanted like $10 million. I guess the one question I keep getting asked from a lot of people is, why did New York let him go? Like, you know, hey, this guy was a number one corner. He made the Pro Bowl. Why were the Giants and him not able to come to an agreement?
Two things. They're sort of related, but not totally related. Number one, he did not fit. They have a new defensive scheme under Don Martindale, who is their new defensive coordinator. You might remember from Baltimore. And Wink, heavy blitz, heavy man coverage. This is where it's tied together. Bradberry's not comfortable in man coverage. He's much more comfortable in zone coverage. That's how he made his money coming out of Panthers, one of the better zone corners in the league. And last year was an off year for Bradberry to the point where people, though he just turns 29, people are scratching their heads like, okay, is he in a regression? Is he the same player? Nobody seems to know. But what I can tell you is he still could play. He's clearly better than Steven Nelson, which is the other part of this. Is he an upgrade over Steven Nelson? Obviously. That's why you're willing to double what they paid him. It's funny. They paid Steve Nelson, I think, $3.25 million with some upside. So they're more than doubling that. And this is a guy still in his prime. Maybe he's not quite as good as he once was. We don't know that yet, though. It might be just a one-year aberration. But the fact of the matter is the guy's talented. He's long. He could run, high character. Now, Chip Mosher had a good note. One little concerning thing is, Mike, he didn't tackle well last season. And one of the teams that Jeff spoke to told him that. That would worry me a little bit because you got to tackle at corner. One of the things that corners have to do, which maybe they don't love doing, is tackling, but you got to be able to do it.
Yeah, and several teams in, as you mentioned, he turned down Texans, which ended up getting Steve Nelson. Other teams started to sign guys, but it was reported that there were, double-digit teams involved in on James Bradberry, and he basically said, the scheme here and the fact that the Eagles, they being viewed as a team that is, a team that's ready to win.
Well, here's the thing: if you're Bradberry, you know the NFC East because you played in it for a short period of time, but you know it. You've played these teams in that division. You know the NFC well. That's where he's played with the Panthers and then the Giants now with the Eagles. So that does give you a little bit of an advantage. If you're a player, you feel more comfortable with it. But the thing is, because the Eagles, we mentioned this last week. One of the things that would be attractive to Bradberry is the Eagles played the most zone coverage by far in the first half of last season. Over 90% zone coverage in the first half, which is almost hard to believe in today's NFL, where man coverage is not quite in vogue, but it's a little bit better than maybe it's more in vogue than it was years ago. the fact of the matter is it was a better fit systematically for Bradberry. But the key here is, Mike, they're going to have to play a lot of zone coverage for him to be comfortable, and that's our understanding. Though they started playing more man coverage in the second half of last year, they're still going to be heavy zone coverage compared to other teams.
So, right, how he fits with this team and how does he change things the way that John Gannon's going to call his defense?
Yeah, and this is key because he's also tall. The Eagles are one of the few teams that have two corners at least 6 foot or over. That's rare in today's NFL, Mike. They both can run, although Slay's a better athlete. Bradberry still can run. And having that size, it gives you the ability for matchup-wise to do certain things. And it will help, no question. And then you absolutely guarantee Avonte Maddox will not have to play on the outside. Because we knew 2 years ago he's just not comfortable with it. Last year, having to play mostly inside really helped him revive his career, which he certainly did. That's why he got his extension. And now the other part of this, Mike, this is important. Zach McPherson certainly will not have to start. Now, right now, as we speak, he'll be their top outside corner. But when you talk about how you can play, it gives you the ability, if you want to match up, you can match up. You can play a matchup zone or mirror match zone coverage. You could play more man is a little bit more of a concern. I would be concerned about that. But overall, it just gives you more that you can do. Because let's say training camp started now, they didn't get Bradberry, and they were still working on someone like a Trey Waynes or someone who has experience with Gannon or knows the defense that he would run. You're not going to be as good without getting Bradberry. So you can't do everything that you'd want. That's why I thought it was important to talk about that. Now you feel you could do more. It's just the man coverage versus zone. It's not that he was terrible in man. He's just not as good as he is in zone. He's more comfortable. But I think Mosher had a point about how, despite the zone coverage ability, when asked to play bigger receivers, he actually did a good job. That's what the tape showed from Jeff's source. I think that's important. And the reason why we had heard last week when we reported this that they're very interested in him, they like when he's played at his best. He's super competitive and he's athletic enough and he's long. He's had interceptions before. That's we know that the last couple of years, the Eagles are not getting a lot of turnovers, and that may change because they've got better talent with everything that they're going to do on deep and all the talent they brought in. Two new starting linebackers, most likely. Hassan Reddick, and this gives them an ability, by the way. Now they've got a lot of talent, more talent on defense. They're probably going to play a decent amount of 34 front. So you're going to see a lot of changes on defense, and the expectations are really high for this defense.
Right, and you mentioned 34. I mean, they did that a couple of years ago with Billy Davis. I mean, what does that mean for guys like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and Hargrave? I mean, guys who are more traditional 4-3 players.
Now, Cox played it, if you remember. He definitely played it. Well, you're absolutely right on Billy Davis. But I'd have to ask if they were more one-gap or two-gap. Typically, but not always, when you play 34, you're a two-gap defense, which means these guys are going to have to take up two gaps instead of one. We'll learn more about that. Here's the thing, though, with Jordan Davis, right? We'll start on the defensive line. The question for him is, how many snaps can he handle? Because he's playing 22 to 25 snaps a game for Georgia last season. Part of it is because they had a lot of big leads. He's not a pass rusher yet. So when you're playing a nickel, he's not going to be on the field. It's just, you're not going to play him yet. Now, next year, he'll certainly be starting for Fletcher Cox. Because Cox's contract is up, and you can't trade up for a guy in the first round and not play him a lot. So that's the expectation as we speak now, barring something unforeseen. So when you go forward with this season, you've got this front. You've got Cox, who's played in a 34 front. Now I don't know that he's real comfortable with it. Brandon Graham's done it as a stand-up outside linebacker. He's done it. Milton Williams, we were talking about this on the show this morning. His arms aren't long enough for him to play defensive end as a 5 technique. You need guys 33-inch arms. He's about 31 and change. It's just not going to be right. But when they play 43, I don't know if they'll play. I don't know if they're going to jump the 5-2 yet. We're not sure yet. We'll know a little bit more as we go forward here. But they'll play some 43. They'll play some 34. And the great thing is they could be multiple. That's what we were told a couple months ago. We started questioning it until they got to the draft, and then once they drafted Jordan Davis, we're like, all right. We kind of see what they're going to do here. And Reddick, by the way, will be a great 34 outside linebacker as long as you don't ask him to cover. That's one area we were told at the time of the signing from Carolina. He's just not comfortable with it. And the Panthers, as our Panthers source told us, they rarely ask him to do that.
Talking with Adam Caplan, Football at 4. What's it mean for the rest of the guys in this secondary, including the safeties? So you have Bradberry, you have Maddox, you have Slay. We imagine that's your guys there, and then Harris and Epps, I guess, right now, right? What is the rest of the secondary? What's it mean for the rest of the personnel?
Yes, so we'll stay at corner. McPherson will be the third corner now. We don't know who their fourth corner is. They want to take a look at 2 or 3 of those young guys that were with the team last year, but they didn't get a full off season. The Tay Gallons, the Vincents of the world, they'll get a chance at it. And then, look, I would not rule out another player in defensive back, safety, or corner signed before training camp starts. We were debating this on yesterday's show, which you could get on any podcast platform and YouTube, that it would really behoove them to sign a veteran corner for depth purposes, for emergency purposes. Because think about this, right? And I know Slay stayed healthy. If Slay or Bradberry can't play 1 week, do you really feel comfortable? Or if it's a long period of time, go with Zach McPherson. This is a team, Mike, right now, they've done so much work in this roster. You and I talked about this in the last show prior to the Bradberry signing. They still have had a very good offseason. Through the latter part of free agency and the draft, they've done a terrific job, the front office has, of fortifying this roster. So there's no reason to think that they can't not only compete for it, but they have to be the favorite right now, at least in my eyes. For the NFC East, but Moshe and I debated it. Eagles right now. In fact, I said last week on television on Sports Grid with Scott Farrell. I know you met Scott. I said, absolutely over 8.5 wins. That is I hate to say lock. That is a great bet for over-unders. That to me is now it may change now with Bradberry. I haven't looked lately, but to me I love the over 8.5.
Yeah, we were literally just talking about that last hour, and I agree. I feel like they won 9 last year with. I mean, a much lesser roster. I mean, they've added probably 6 starters to this team.
Well, okay, I didn't mention A.J. Brown. There's one right there. Okay, on offense, A.J. Brown for no question about it. It obviously is a new starter. Though the deal is not quite what was reported. It's a little bit less than that. It's about $22-23 million per year if you look at the real money, but it's still a good deal. And A.J. Brown's a stud. That's a huge move for them. 2 new linebackers will be their main linebackers. If Dean is healthy, he and White are going to be starting. They're going to be looked upon as the main linebackers. So, yes. Now Bradberry, now Jordan Davis will be a part of it. He's not going to be starting, but he'll be a part of it. And the other thing is they've got such versatility now on defense because they have so many new players.
Reddick?
My one concern, Reddick, yes. My one concern there was safety. The Jesse Bates stuff is just internet. There's nothing to it. It's just fans that are pining for him because that's the one position. There's nothing going on. So that's just the bloggers are starting to just say, hell, it makes too much sense. It sure does. But it's the cost. And remember, there are a couple things the bloggers are missing. Rarely, they're one of the teams, Mike. If you player trades in the last 15 years, they're in the bottom 5. They don't like trading. They just don't like doing it. That's what the late Paul Brown felt, and it's his son Mike who owns the team. He just doesn't believe in trading away players. He lets them. They're big on letting the contracts expire. Would never say never, but it would behoove the Eagles to bring in another safety for competition. That's the one missing link for the football team. Absolutely, but actually both free and strong. They need more competition.
Yep. Let's look at how much better this team is with Bradberry on the roster. I mean, like last year when they got Steve Nelson, it was like, okay, now they can compete at least. You know, like you have a professional guy. He might not have been great, but how much better does Bradberry make this team?
It's a good question, Mike. It's funny because on our show that dropped yesterday, Moshe said, what's the floor? And I kind of went back and forth. I said the floor, which means the least amount of wins, would be 10. And he and I both agreed the maximum would be 12. That's the ceiling. I mean, 12-5, to have a 3-win increase. Now, the schedule, it's funny because, everybody debates this, how tough the schedule is. The schedule is a top 5 schedule. If you look at the way the teams look like now, you and I went over this last week, and we did a schedule show last week. That was one of our most listened to shows of the history of our company, which is interesting. It really surprises me, Mike. You never quite know with this, and you know that as well, being as a host. You never quite know what people want. And then we always look at our history of our numbers and see what works, what doesn't work. We read our emails. What you guys like? What you didn't like? And we see the comments. And it's very clear to us they wanted to know what we thought, and they want to know what the debate was, how easy the schedule is, how good is, as you asked me, how good is the football team. Right now, we've got, at least I'm going to do a power rankings for our website, InsideTheBirds.com, very soon. Now that this should be the last major move for a while, barring something unforeseen. So right now, I've got the Eagles as a top 4 team in the NFC. Right now, I probably would rank them as the 4th in that conference.
All right. So with that, is there anything else that Howie's, any other moves on this defense, any other moves to make? Is Howie still picking up the phone, or is this it?
Of course. I mean, look, the way the Brown thing actually started a while back. It was well before the trade. It's just what happened is the Titans said they weren't trading him, so teams backed off. And then once we got close to the draft, the Eagles were certainly pressing. And the Titans changed their mind when they saw that the money that he wanted was nowhere close to. And I believe, my sense is, Mike, with the Titans, they were concerned about his injury history with the knee, and that they were not willing to go anywhere near where the Eagles were going. Though other teams, by the way, called the Titans. It wasn't just the Eagles, but the Eagles were able to strike a deal, and it's just a great job by Howie Roseman. And right now they're right there. Now, as far as another. They have to they really should get another safety by training camp. Don't need to do anything now, but they really need to get another safety in there. I just don't think they're going to be good enough. If they got a good starting, or if they got a safety to compete for starting job, it just makes the competition better, Mike. And right now they don't have much of a competition. Absolutely, did a good job. We've been talking about him on your show for a while. And Anthony Harris is disappointing. I know he's back because he knows the defense, Mike, but he's got to play better. If you want to be a championship team. And I'm not saying the Eagles are a Super Bowl team, but they are a legit playoff team right now. Let's be honest here. If you want to compete for a Super Bowl, why the heck not? I understand Hurts has got to be much better, but if you want to solidify this thing, why not upgrade a safety?
Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com. The Inside the Birds podcast is out. The newest, the latest. It's out right now wherever you listen to your podcast. Download it this weekend and take a listen for more Eagles offseason. James Bradberry's in. That was the big move this week. What is next? Well, we shall find out. We've got some time to go before training camp gets here to maybe plug those holes. Adam, have a great weekend, man.
All right, thanks. See you.
All right, Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com. And the Inside the Birds podcast right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.